My name is Rachel, and I'm a 32-year-old single mom who's been through more than most people could handle in a lifetime. Ethan's dad, Mike, walked out when Ethan was barely a year old, leaving me to juggle rent, bills, and parenting on a waitress's salary. It wasn't glamorous, but I made it work. Claire, my older sister by 3 years, had always been the perfect one, married to a lawyer, living in a pristine suburban house with a manicured lawn and a life that screamed stability. She didn't have kids of her own, which I always thought was by choice, but she adored Ethan. Or so I thought. She'd been there for us, babysitting when I had to pull double shifts, bringing over groceries when my fridge was empty, even paying for Ethan's preschool tuition one year when I was drowning in debt. I trusted her. I leaned on her. And that's what made this letter so gut-wrenching. The letter arrived that morning, tucked innocently among bills and junk mail. I almost missed it, but the official-looking envelope with Claire's neat handwriting caught my eye. I tore it open, expecting maybe an invitation to one of her fancy dinner parties or a note about Ethan's upcoming birthday. Instead, I found legal jargon that made my head spin, petition for full custody, and proposed co-parenting plan. My hands trembled as I read. Claire claimed I was an unfit mother, citing my unstable financial situation and erratic work hours. She painted me as someone who couldn't provide a safe and structured environment for Ethan. Safe? Structured? I'd given up everything for that boy, nights out, savings, sleep, my dreams of going back to school. And the co-parenting plan? It was a mockery. It outlined supervised visits, for me, as if I were some deadbeat, and gave Claire primary custody, with Ethan living in her house full-time. My son, in her sterile, childless mansion, while I was reduced to a visitor in his life, *I couldn't breathe. I dropped the letter and sank to the floor, my mind racing. How could she do this? Why would she do this? Claire and I had always been close, despite our differences. Growing up, she was the responsible one, always bailing me out of trouble, whether it was sneaking me out of detention in high school or lending me money when I maxed out my credit card in my 20s. She was the sister who had it all together, while I was the hot mess. But I wasn't a mess when it came to Ethan. He was my world, and I thought Claire knew that. I thought she respected me as a mother, even if my life wasn't as polished as hers. Clearly, I was wrong. I called her immediately, my fingers shaking as I dialed. She picked up on the third ring, her voice calm and measured, as if she'd been expecting this. Rachel, I was going to talk to you about this in person, she said, her tone infuriatingly reasonable. I just want what's best for Ethan. Best for Ethan? I wanted to scream. I was his mother. I knew what was best for him. But before I could get a word in, she went on about how her house was more stable, how her husband, Greg, could provide opportunities one couldn't, how Ethan deserved a better life. Each word was a dagger, twisting deeper. I demanded to know why she didn't talk to me first, why she went straight to lawyers. Her response was vague, something about protecting Ethan's future and doing what's necessary. I hung up, tears streaming down my face, my mind a whirlwind of anger and betrayal. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying our childhood, searching for clues I'd missed. Claire had always been controlling, hadn't she? The way she'd lecture me about my choices, the way she'd subtly criticize my parenting, always with that patronizing smile. You're doing great, Rachel, but maybe Ethan needs a stricter bedtime routine, she'd say, or, I noticed his shoes are getting small, why don't I buy him new ones? I thought she was just being helpful, but now I saw it differently. Was this her plan all along? To swoop in and take my son, to mold him into the perfect child she never had? I felt sick. Ethan was asleep in his room, his little chest rising and falling, his stuffed dinosaur clutched tightly. I couldn't lose him. I wouldn't the next morning. I called a lawyer, a friend of a friend who agreed to take my case for a small retainer I could barely afford. Her name was Lisa, and she was blunt but kind, with a no-nonsense attitude that gave me a sliver of hope. She explained that Claire's petition was serious but not unbeatable. She's got money and a stable home, which courts like, Lisa said, but you're his mother. That carries weight. We need to prove you're capable and that her claims are exaggerated. Capable. The word stung. I'd spent years proving I was capable, scraping by, making sure Ethan had everything he needed. But now I had to prove it in a courtroom, against my own sister. I spent the next few days gathering evidence, bank statements showing I paid my bills, mostly on time, letters from Ethan's teachers praising his progress, photos of us together. At the park, the zoo, his birthday parties. Every memory felt like ammunition, but it also broke my heart. These were moments of love, not exhibits in a legal battle. Meanwhile, Claire kept texting, acting like nothing was wrong. Can I take Ethan to the aquarium this weekend, she'd ask, or I bought him a new jacket, want me to drop it off? I wanted to scream at her, to tell her to stay away, but Lisa warned me to stay civil. "Don't give her anything to use against you," she said. So I played nice, biting my tongue, while inside I was raging. The first court date was set for 2 weeks later, and I felt like I was walking toward a guillotine. I hadn't told Ethan anything, he was too young to understand, and I didn't want to scare him. But he sensed something was off. "Why are you sad, Mommy?" he asked one night, his big brown eyes searching mine. I forced a smile and told him I was just tired, but my heart ached. How could I explain that his aunt, the woman he loved, was trying to take him away from me? That she thought I wasn't good enough. As the days ticked by, I started noticing things I hadn't before. Claire's texts were too calculated, too cheerful. And then there was Greg, her husband, who'd always been distant but polite. He'd started calling more, asking about Ethan's schedule, offering to help with pickups and drop-offs. It felt like they were building a case, watching my every move. I even caught Claire taking photos of my apartment when she dropped off that jacket, my cluttered kitchen, the laundry pile in the corner. Was she documenting my unfit life? The paranoia was eating me alive, but I couldn't shake it. This wasn't just about custody. This was personal. By the time the court date loomed, I was a wreck. I barely ate, barely slept. Every night, I'd check on Ethan, watching him sleep, terrified that these moments might be stolen from me. But I wasn't going down without a fight. Claire might have money, a fancy house, and a lawyer husband, but I had something she didn't. A mother's love. And I'd fight with everything I had to keep my son. The courtroom was colder than I expected, both in temperature and atmosphere. The wooden benches were hard, the air thick with tension, and the judge's stern face made my stomach churn. I sat next to Lisa, my lawyer, clutching a folder of documents. That felt like my lifeline. Across the room, Claire sat with Greg, her face composed, almost serene, as if she were here for a routine errand and not to tear my world apart. Ethan was with a neighbor, blissfully unaware that his future was being decided in this sterile room. The judge called the case, and my heart lurched. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading for weeks. Lisa had prepared me for what to expect, but nothing could have braced me for the onslaught. Claire's lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit, stood up and painted a picture of me that was both unrecognizable and humiliating. He called me unstable, pointing to my inconsistent work hours and the time my electricity was shut off for 2 days because I couldn't pay the bill. He brought up a speeding ticket from 3 years ago, spinning it as evidence of my reckless behavior. Every word was a punch, and I could feel the judge's eyes on me, assessing, judging. Lisa squeezed my hand under the table, whispering, "Stay strong. We'll get our turn." When it was our turn, Lisa was fierce. She presented my evidence, Ethan's glowing report cards, character references from friends and coworkers, proof of my steady rent payments. She argued that financial struggles didn't make me an unfit mother, that love and dedication mattered more than a big bank account. I took the stand, my voice shaking but resolute, and told the judge about the nights I stayed up sewing Ethan's Halloween costume. The mornings I walked him to school in the rain because my car wouldn't start, the way he'd curl up next to me and say, "I love you, Mommy." I wasn't perfect, but I was his mother, and no one could love him more. Claire's testimony was what broke me. She stood there, poised and polished, and spoke about Ethan like he was already hers. She talked about her stable home, her flexible schedule, the private school she and Greg could afford. She said she'd always been there for Ethan, stepping in when I couldn't cope. Couldn't cope? I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat frozen, tears burning my eyes, as she described her co-parenting plan like it was some generous compromise. It wasn't. It was a blueprint to erase me from Ethan's life, relegating me to supervised visits while she played mom. But then, something shifted. During cross-examination, Lisa asked Claire why she hadn't discussed her concerns with me before going to court. Claire hesitated, her first crack of unease. She mumbled something about acting in Ethan's best interest, but Lisa pressed harder. "Isn't it true," Lisa said, "that you've been planning this for over a year? That you've been documenting Rachel's struggles, not to help her, but to build a case against her?" The room went silent. Claire's face paled, and Greg shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Lisa produced a series of text messages, ones I didn't even know existed, between Claire and Greg, where she talked about preparing evidence and waiting for the right moment. I felt like I'd been slapped. My own sister had been plotting against me, biding her time. The judge adjourned for the day, and I left the courtroom in a daze. Lisa was optimistic, saying Claire's credibility was crumbling, but I couldn't shake the betrayal. That night, I confronted Claire at her house. I didn't care about Lisa's warnings to stay calm, I needed answers. She let me in, her expression guarded, and we sat in her pristine living room, the silence heavy. "Why, Claire?" I asked, my voice breaking. Why are you doing this to me? For the first time, she didn't have a rehearsed answer. Her eyes filled with tears, and she looked away. I love him, Rachel, she said. And I can't have kids. You know that. It hit me like a freight train. Claire and Greg had been trying for years to have a child, but she'd never told me it was impossible. She'd hidden her pain, her infertility, and instead fixated on Ethan. He's not yours, I said, my voice trembling with anger and pity. He's my son. Claire sobbed, admitting she thought she could give him a better life, that she saw my struggles and believed she was saving him. Saving him? From me? I walked out, my heart torn between fury and heartbreak. I didn't know my sister anymore. The next court date was a blur. Lisa hammered Claire's motives, exposing her actions as less about Ethan's welfare and more about her own unfulfilled desires. The judge seemed skeptical of Claire's claims, especially after the text messages. But there was one final bombshell. Lisa had dug deeper and found a financial trail. Claire and Greg had been consulting with a private adoption agency, exploring ways to formalize their role in Ethan's life. It wasn't just custody, they'd been planning to adopt him, to make him legally theirs. The courtroom gasped, and I felt the air leave my lungs. The judge's face hardened, and I knew Claire had lost any chance of winning. When the ruling came, it was like a weight lifted off my chest. The judge denied Claire's petition, affirming my custody of Ethan. The co-parenting plan was thrown out, and Claire was ordered to have no contact with Ethan unless I approved. The judge acknowledged my struggles but praised my dedication, saying, "A mother's love is not measured by her bank account." I cried, relief and exhaustion washing over me. Ethan was mine, and no one could take him away. But the victory was bittersweet. Claire was still my sister, and part of me grieved the bond we'd lost. I didn't know if we could ever repair it, but for now, my focus was Ethan. I picked him up from the neighbors, and he ran into my arms, giggling about a new toy car. I held him tight, promising myself I'd never let anyone come between us again. As I tucked him into bed that night, I felt a new strength. I wasn't just a mom fighting to keep her son, I was a warrior who'd faced betrayal and won. But the scars remained, a reminder that even those closest to you can hurt you the deepest. I looked at Ethan's sleeping face and knew every battle was worth it. For him, I'd fight the world.